This is a cover for issue 9, I think, of Man-Eaters, which is a little suggestive for a comic about children. So I don't know where she was thinking about this cover. Anyway, I was reading Chelsea Cain's Twitter when she nuked it. I was right in the middle of it, but I got screen caps, which isn't such a problem because there was a bunch of other people who also screen capped it. But I was literally right in the middle reading her Twitter, reading that dog pile when all of a sudden Paige was not found. She was getting dogpiled by left-wing sociopaths, just the most vicious people, claiming that Chelsea is a TERF. Bianca, what the hell is a TERF? Glad you asked. It's a trans-exclusionary radical feminist. They believe that men are men and women are women. Apparently, this makes them worse than Stalin. The opposing side feels that men are women if they choose to be. They literally believe that biological men are in fact biological women. We were always at war with Oceania. 2 legs good, 4 legs bad. We were always at war with East Asia. So what happened was Chelsea Cain, who has been fired from other projects and rage quit Twitter in 2016, she writes about a coming-of-age story about the transition of girls into women. Sorry, poor choice of words. Chelsea Cain wanted to tell a story about girls entering puberty and becoming women, and dealing with the pain in the ass of periods and PMS. The story kind of loosely reminds me of Judy Blume's We Must Increase Our Bust. So the story hinges on a biological point in a female's life, the onset of ovulation, when a girl becomes a woman capable of reproduction. Okay, so what's the problem? It's a story about puberty. Men and women experience puberty in different ways. Therein lies the problem. This little biological fact has the left-wing Twitter new thinkers losing their minds. Biological facts aren't in alignment with the narrative. The first wrong think. 1. Trans women don't get periods. Trans women don't get periods because trans women are biologically men. Men don't have vaginas. Technically, a trans woman is a gay man who dresses as a woman. This is just sad. Boys have penises, girls have vaginas. If you are bleeding from your penis, you're probably dying. Get help. Believe it or not, most trans women don't actually think they are biological women. They know that they are gay men who enjoy dressing as women, and who can blame them? I think you can safely argue that women have more fabulous clothing and makeup options. You go, girl. So, from what I gather, trans women aren't included in this comic universe for obvious reasons. To include trans women who don't have periods in this universe would just further point out the fact that they are not biological women. So leaving them out of the story is a kindness. This belongs in no comic. This is her dad, Soy Boy. This is the hipster Soy Boy. I don't understand if she thinks she's dunking on these guys. These are male feminists. These are your people. Male feminists are the absolute... Oh, come on. That's... This guy, I think he's a cop. He's supposed to be a cop or something. And you're making him an absolute... Come on. That's... The second issue is that trans men aren't included in this story. Trans men are women who dress in boots, flannel, and jeans. Some will cut their breasts off and inject themselves with testosterone. Some might argue that women who inject themselves with drugs are mentally ill. But since I don't want to be sent to room 101 for wrong think, I won't raise the issue. Okay, back to trans men, or lesbians as they are otherwise known. I guess if they weren't included in the book, I guess you could include them. Women dressed as men hit puberty and have their periods. Wearing men's clothing won't stop your female biology. But if Cain included these women, it would just point out the fact that women get periods. A pair of boots can't stop it, so Cain was just as well off not including them. This is like an anti-comic. What do you... Take a closer look at these symbols. I see you. A couple of issues here. The whole storyline revolves around a biological event. It's problematic for the NPCs. Biological reality is literally offensive to them. It's a mad, mad, mad world. So really, there is no way that a story about periods, nocturnal emissions, erections, or any specific biologically gendered events can be written and still be politically correct. It's a strange world where penises and vaginas are problematic. If I was on Twitter, I would ask... I'm not. I would ask these people, these Twitter NPCs, how Chelsea Cain is supposed to handle this situation. NPCs never have a solution, mostly because they're teenagers, or at least emotionally teenagers. If they were honest, they would say, don't write the story in the first place. A story about a biological event unique to women has no place in this brave new world. Imagine the boot of a soy boy repeatedly crushing your face forever. Ugh. They might say, make biological men who dress as women somehow magically have periods, which actually is an interesting idea, but let me explain something to the transgender crowd. They might imagine a fictional trans universe where a man can turn himself into a biological woman with a magical spell or something. What they don't understand is that the men who enjoy having sex with transsexuals are gay men. They want a man dressed as a woman, not to be indelicate, but when that miniskirt comes off, they are expecting a dick. A little bit not safe for work here, but gay men don't want to reach up the miniskirt and feel a vagina. That just isn't how they are wired, not usually anyway. Part of their sexual attraction is a kink of a man dressed as a woman. NPCs on Twitter seem to think that since trans women are actually women, the gay men who are their partners aren't actually gay men with a penis in their mouth. They are in fact straight men with a penis in their mouth. Oh, Bianca, don't be such a prude. That penis is actually a vagina. It's nonsense. And it shows you the difference between transgenders and real trans people. They assume that all trans women would turn into biological women if they had the chance. This isn't true, and it's a problematic discussion in its own right. The whole thing is confusing because of the premise that men are women. Where was I going with this? All this penis and vagina talk is a bit confusing. Oh yeah, there's probably no way Chelsea Cain could write this Judy Blume meets Stephen King story in current year. The 12 Twitter NPCs won't allow it. It's a little bit funny to watch the left eat itself. The issue is that Chelsea Cain is old, at least 2 generations older than the Twitter NPCs who are trying to destroy her for wrongthink. It's like the difference between the moderate Dems who supported Hillary and the socialist kids who supported Bernie. Chelsea Cain is from an older generation that is super feminist, very pro-woman, but their worldview doesn't include men who dress as women. It's a reminder that the left wing is also on a spectrum, no pun intended. The 12 Twitter wizard gatekeepers are mostly setting the rules for the left, at least in comics, but occasionally they will butt heads as seen here. I'm sure that Chelsea Cain is still a far-left whack job, but she is pro-woman. Ironically enough, the NPCs on the left are pro-men, but the men have to wear lipstick. These are the tweet. She was quote tweeting some people on Twitter, and these got her in pseudo trouble. It's not real trouble. It's like pseudo outrage. And it's pseudo outrage from 12 nut jobs on Twitter. Actually, one of the nut jobs threatened to kill Ethan Van Sciver a couple weeks ago. Actually, what happened a couple weeks ago, one guy outright threatened to kill Ethan Van Sciver, but then there was another guy who was overlooked, and he also made what could reasonably be construed as a death threat. More on him later. Anyway, it's clown world. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. My only consolation is that the coming civil war will wipe away all this bullshit. Nobody's time to worry about pronouns when dodging 762. So in summation, I'm defending a crazy SJW who is dogpiled by even crazier NPCs who believe that men are women and should bleed out of their dicks that are actually unusually shaped vaginas. Back to the, if I was on Twitter, I would ask the Twitter NPCs how Cain should change the story to make them happy. I searched Twitter and I never found the answer. Even if I was on Twitter and asked the question, they'd probably simply block me. That's a minor problem with Twitter. People will block at the drop of a hat and you end up trapped in an echo chamber. What would I do if I was Chelsea Cain? I would tell them to go kill... I better not say that. How about go F... Can't say that either. No, wait. Realistically, the best option for her would be to simply mute them. Do not respond to SJW critics. Never apologize to SJWs. All she did was add fuel to the fire. She made a mistake in asking for advice from people who, one, weren't her customers, and two, she didn't know. Why ask for advice from people you don't know or trust? They aren't buying your book. Ask them to hold up a picture of your book before they offer advice. To be honest, very few people actually bought Man-Eaters. It sells under 10,000 issues and operates at a loss, which begs the question, why are you operating a business venture at a loss? That makes it propaganda for a cult. Actually, if the NPCs got her to cancel Man-Eaters, they would end up saving her money. If I was her, how can she redress the grievance that men don't have bleeding vaginas? God, that's such a ridiculous sentence. I can't believe we're talking about this stuff. Maybe say that not all books are for all people, but I'm going on the assumption that we're dealing with reasonable people. We aren't. We're mostly dealing with mentally ill teenagers with cell phones. There really is no way to include trans girls in the story. It would drive the NPCs crazy to learn that boys can't bleed from the vaginas they don't have. The problem is the story hinges on the parasite in the blood, and even if she changed the story so that trans women were somehow included in the story, the NPCs wouldn't buy it anyway. Mags Visaggio writes Kim and Kim, which has trans people in it. I think there are issues that sell less than 1,000 copies. Get woke, go broke isn't always true. Captain Marvel and Black Panther did $1 billion each, but actually stuff like Man-Eaters or Kim and Kim appeals to such a tiny percentage of your potential audience that pandering to them is absolutely insane. Anyway, she rage quit Twitter the other day, which was a great idea, but she'll be back in a few months. Literally nobody will miss her. Man-Eaters isn't even roastable. It's bad, but I feel funny about roasting a book that is actually losing money. This book is, it's written by Chelsea Cain, who really doesn't like men. She has an enormous chip on her shoulder. And I don't know if the talk of turfiness is true. It might be. But really, literally, with a story like this, there's no way to write this story in 2020. At least, I take that back. There's no way for a person who is on the left to write this book. A moderate could write this book. Someone in Comicsgate could write this book, and it would probably be all right, because you don't expect much from them. But it deals with the parasite in the blood and hormone levels and all this. How do you include trans girls in this story? If you go to Google and hashtag Chelsea Cain, her page is down, of course, but just search for her name. You can find the stories and the response to her and stuff. And everyone says it's problematic that she's writing a story about puberty, but they don't say what she could do to fix the story. Anyway, it's losing money. She says she doesn't take a salary for it, so she's writing this stuff for free. Why? Wouldn't you rather... I assume she's independently wealthy. But wouldn't you rather write something that people enjoy? The first couple of issues, I think issue 3 was down below 8,000 copies, and so this is issue 9, so what is it? 5,000 copies? I don't know. Comicron didn't have the numbers that far out. People aren't buying it, and you could just as easily write something entertaining. Anyway, leave a like and a comment, and give a subscription a try, won't you? Thanks.